Good evening and welcome to St Giles Rectory. Next Tuesday, the 2nd of February, will be Candlemas Day. And Candlemas is when the Christian Church draws to an end the Christmas cycle of celebrations and starts to look towards Easter. There are some fascinating sayings connected with Candlemas Day associated with the weather. One of these goes, "If Candlemas Day be fair and bright, winter shall take another flight. If Candlemas Day be dull and wet, winter shall go and not come again." And the idea there is whatever the type of weather on Candlemas Day affects what the weather will be like for the rest of the winter. And another goes, "A farmer should on Candlemas Day have half his corn and half his hay." And there's a German proverb which goes, "The badger peeps out of his hole on Candlemas Day, and if he finds snow, he walks abroad, but if he sees the sun shining, he draws back into his hole." Well, I have badgers in the Rectory garden, and I happen to know that they're already up and about. But that apart, the folklore apart, the spiritual significance of Candlemas is that it is when we remember the child Jesus being presented in the temple. 40 days after the birth of the firstborn, he had to be presented to the Lord in the temple on the principle that he belonged to God, but then he could be bought back from God, as it were, for the sum of 5 shekels. And also an offering had to be made for the purification of the mother, of a lamb and of a young pigeon. And if the family couldn't afford a lamb, it could give 2 pigeons instead. And that was called the offering of the poor, and that was the offering that Mary and Joseph gave. These are strange old ceremonies, but they do have behind them one great important conviction, and that conviction is that a child is a gift of God. The Stoics used to say that a child is only lent, not given. And of all God's gifts, there is no gift that for which we are so answerable as the gift of a child. While Mary and Joseph were going through this ritual, an elderly man called Simeon, who lived in Jerusalem, came into the temple, and he had this conviction that God would not let him die until he had seen the Lord's Messiah. And when he came into the temple and saw the child Jesus, he knew at once that this child Jesus was the Messiah, was the light of the world. And he said, "Lord, now you can let your servant go in peace, for my eyes have seen your salvation, a light to lighten the Gentiles." And because Simeon recognized this light of Christ, we therefore on Candlemas Day, on the Feast of the Presentation, bless candles and hold them, and which therefore called Candlemas. And we will be keeping Candlemas in this parish, not actually next Tuesday, but on Sunday, because it's always a shame if the majority of the congregation aren't with us for such a beautiful ceremony. And so we keep this beautiful service when the majority of us are gathered together on Sunday. And I want to read to you just a short reflection about Candlemas by a 7th century patriarch of Jerusalem called Sophronius. And he says, "Mary, the mother of the Lord, bore in her arms the true light, and came to the help of those who were lying in darkness. In the same way, we must hurry out to meet him who is truly light, enlightened by the beams of his brightness, and bearing in our hands the light which shines for all. Indeed, this is the mystery which we celebrate, that the light has come into the world and has given its light when it was shrouded in darkness, and that the dayspring has visited us from on high and given light to those who are sitting in darkness. That is why we go in procession with lamps in our hands, and hasten, bearing lights, showing both that the light has shone upon us, and signifying the glory which is to come to us through him. Therefore, let us all run together to meet God. That true light which enlightens every man coming into this world has come. Let us all be enlightened. Let us all be filled with light. Let none of us remain a stranger to this brightness. Let no one who is filled with it continue in the darkness. But let us go forth shining with light. Let us go together, bright with that light, to welcome with old Simeon that everlasting shining light. Rejoicing with him in our souls, let us sing a hymn of thanks to the Begetter and Father of the light, who has sent the true light and driven away the darkness and made us all to shine with light. Amen.